Okay, morning viewers. I'm Stephen Okuta and I'm going to take you through geography, map and map work. So today we are going to look at how maps are made, how maps are constructed, and the guidelines that are used for making maps. So I welcome you all, even as we are still staying at home. I hope this subject will help you. So we are going to focus today on map and map work. Map and map work. So within this, we want to focus on a few definitions. So the first definition that we'll focus on is on map, and then we have plan, so that you know the differences, plan, and the last one is a picture. So we'll have to differentiate this. So by defining map, we'll be able to tell what a map is, what a plan is, and what a picture is. So a map has a different definitions. So the first definition is a representation of the Earth's surface. It is a representation of a Earth's surface that is presented on a flat paper. It can be a flat paper, it can be a piece of wood, it can be a piece of cloth, or any other material presented, provided that it is presented on a flat material. Then the other one is a map can be defined as a drawing. It's a drawing of a particular place. It can be a city, it can be a country, or it can be any area that has been presented. So it can be drawn partly or all of it. Then the other one is a visual representation and the entire area or part of an area, typically presented on a flat surface. Another definition of a map can be a representation of an area on an earth surface, on a flat surface, such as wood, objects, or even some of the materials that are provided. Then the last one is the symbolic. It is the symbolic representation of the selected characteristics of a place. So all those definitions apply. Then when we come to a plan is an outline of a structure. It is an outline of a structure or an object that is drawn to a scale. So a scale will be defined by the drawer, the person who draws the plan. So a plan is quite different in that it gives the dimension of a structure that has been drawn. For example, let's take a plan of a football pitch. Normally when it is drawn, it is somehow rectangle, and then there's a place that shows where the goalkeeper is, and then we have the corner post, and it is drawn to a scale. There's a scale that has defined the length and the width of the structure, and therefore we define a plan as an outline that has been drawn to a scale. Then the last definition is on a picture. A picture can be defined as an image of a real object. It is defined as a picture of a real object. So this can be taken through the photography method or by any other method that captures the image of the real object. Now, the next step that we now want to look at is the types of the maps. The types of the maps. So we have three types of a map. We have three types of a map. Number one is a sketch map. A sketch map. That is number one. Then number two, we have what we call topographical maps. Topographical maps. And the last one is atlas maps. Atlas maps. So these are three types of maps that we'll be focusing on and see how they're done. Now, when we look at number one, the sketch map, these are maps that are drawn without the scale. They're not drawn to a scale, meaning they are used simply to show the areas of interest. They are used to show the areas of interest, and that's why we call them a sketch map. For example, when we want to identify a place, maybe in a school or in an institution, and we want it to, we are interested in one particular area, we'll have a sketch that directs us to that area of interest. So a sketch map does not necessarily need a scale for it to be drawn. Now, topographical maps. Topographical maps are maps, now it's the opposite of the sketch map. These are maps that are drawn to scale to show different features. These features can be of different characteristics depending on the use that are needed for the purposes of the work that is required. Then, when we focus on this, we are going to look at how, again, atlas maps are formed. So atlas maps, these are maps that are collected together. These are maps that are collected together and combined in one book. So all of you, when you join Form 1, one of the requirements is that you are required to report with an atlas. And an atlas carries different types of maps which are combined together to form a book. So those are the three types of the map. Now, let's look at what do we mean by Mapwork? What do we mean by Mapwork? What do we mean by Mapwork? So Mapwork is the analysis of maps prior to the relation to fieldwork. So it is the analysis of the mapwork. The act of making maps. For example, a person that is given an authority, or a person that is in charge of drawing a map, is called the cartographer. He is called the cartographer. While the act of making the map is called cartography. So cartography is the process of making a map. Cartography is the process of making a map. So let's go to another category. Which is the components of a map. What do we have in a map? So number one component that is contained in a map first start with the key, and then I'll explain. Then number two, we have the title. Number three, we have direction. We have direction. Then we also have number four, margin, or sometimes we call it boundary. Then we also have what we call latitudes or grid references. Latitude or grid grid references. Grid references. Okay. Grid references. So when we start with number 1, which is key, key is a list of symbols. It is a list of symbols that has been used to depict different physical features or the characteristics that has been observed on a map. So key carries the symbols, and these symbols are the ones that gives us the direction of what the cartographer means or insinuates. For example, from your atlas, you ever seen when a line is drawn and it is crossed by small lines at an interval. This will show that this is a railway line. This is a railway line. So it's within a map. When you see this sign, you already know that this is a railway line crossing an area. Then the second one is the title. The second one is the title. The second one is the title. And a title is very, very important. A title is very, very important in map work. The title gives us what the map is all about. So the title gives us of what is all about. For example, when we have this kind of a drawing, for example, we have that and then we say map of Kenya. This is the title. And then it is followed by the map of Kenya. So whoever gets an access to the map will identify this structure as the map of Kenya. So this is very, very important for us to know that a title gives us the structure or the name of the structure or the intention of the cartographer in relation to the drawing. In addition to that, you normally see that this map is enclosed. It is enclosed using a boundary. It is enclosed using a boundary. So the boundary that is used to enclose it is one of the components in that it is used as a frame to enclose the map that has been drawn. So that is another component that is available. The other one is scale. The main intention of the scale is that it gives us the representative fraction of the size of the map that has been used in drawing. In that, if we take our drawing that is currently on the board, and this drawing represents Kenya. You cannot draw a map of Kenya unless you are in another planet, because you require a very, very big flat surface that you'll use. Now, for us to represent Kenya, or for us to give the view of Kenya, we have to reduce it. And by reducing it, we draw it to a scale. So the scale is very, very important. So it's this scale that people can calculate and know that the size of Kenya is of this nature. So it is very important to understand that a scale is used to reduce the surface that should have been drawn to a large surface area to a small surface area. So it's very, very important to know that. Then we also have what we call the latitudes and longitudes, or the grid references, usually found in a map. And you normally see lines crossing like this, the latitudes and the longitudes. And we'll come to that later, whereby we'll know how important are the longitudes and the latitudes. The next component that we should have, again, is the publisher and the date of the publishment. The publisher and the date of the publishment. So normally, in every map that is given, you must provide the publisher. If it is, for example, if it is the Longhall Foundation, they will depict their symbols down there. They will show that this map has been drawn by the Honlon publishers. Or if it is from the surveyors of Kenya, they have to identify the map as the people who drew the map. For example, at Kenyatta University, the geography department is in charge of drawing maps. So with that, they'll give the copyright to the Kenyatta University since it is found within the geography department. So it has to be shown, and the year is very, very important for us to know when was this published, so that whenever we are making a reference to something, we have to get the condition of that stage and the condition of the current stage. So the maps that have been drawn in 1960s are currently different with the ones that are being drawn right now because the technology has improved. So it's very, very important for us to know when was it published and what did it have. So those are very, very important things. Now, this brings us to another component that is very, very important for us, and that is the scale. Now we want to see what a scale means. A scale. So a scale is the relationship or the ratio between the distance and the actual ground. I repeat, a scale is the ratio or relationship between the distance and the actual ground. So it can normally be depicted as scale. A scale is equals to map distance. Scale is equals to map distance all over the actual ground, all over the actual ground. So I hope you understand there is the relationship or the ratio between the map distance and the actual ground, and that's how it is. Now we'll look at the types of scales, the type of scales that are used in the drawing. So there are three types of scales. And one type is the large scale. We have the large scale. The second one is the medium scale. The second one is the medium scale, and the last one is the small scale. So learners, if you ask about the types of the scales that are available, one, you'll notify that there's a large scale, there's a medium scale, and there's a small scale. Let's start by defining what a large scale means. So a large scale is used to present information on a small areas. For example, a map of a village. If you want to present a map of a village compared to a Kenyan, that shows you that within a village context, you'll have to show somehow even the buildings or even the farms, because this is a small area you are drawing. So we use the large scale because it's a small area. So for example, the the standard scale that is normally used for the large scale is between 1 to 2,500, 1 to 2,000, is it 2,000, 25,000, 1 to 25,000, to 1 to 100, 100,000. On to 1 to 100, 10,000, 10,000. 1 to 10,000, and between 1 to 25,000. And we'll come to know how these ratios or these scales are done when we continue with our study. So the other characteristics that is displayed by the large scale is that it has smaller numbers of denominators. It has smaller numbers of denominators, and you can see it's 1. We say 1 represents 2,500, and 1 represents 10,000. So those ones are smaller because we are focusing in a small area, which is a village. So it's very, very important to identify that the scales, when you're using a large scale, it means you present a smaller area. And then other characteristics that the large scale has is that it shows features clearly. Since this is a village and you are drawing a village, presenting it on a flat surface of a sheet, a paper, or a cloth, visible features will be clearly shown because you are focusing in a small area compared to a larger place that maybe you could have been drawing. So for example, we can use a large scale to draw Kenya compared to the other scale that can be used to draw the map of Africa. So be assured that whenever you are using a large scale, you are focusing on a small area, maybe to a village level, or within a village level, you are focusing a drawing to a school. And remember, we said whenever you are drawing a map, that map has a title that gives us the direction to show us that the cartographer is interested in this and that. So it's very, very important. So the last one, again, it contains geographical details. So any map should show a geographical details, and these geographical details can show us maybe are there rivers there, are there vegetation, are there roads, which type of roads that are there. So all these geographical features are shown clearly because this is a small area. Then the medium maps, the medium scales. Number 2, the medium scales. This one, the medium scales focuses on a scale that is between 1 to 50,000. 1 to present 50,000, and 1 to 100,000. So that is the medium. That is the medium scale. So this is the scale that is used to focus on the areas of the maps that are quite bigger than the maps that are found within the large scale. So we say the large scale maps can be reduced to a village level when drawing a school or when drawing your own village, and you are focusing on certain things that you want to be shown or you want people to be educated on. So it's very important you know that the largest scales are used to draw small areas. Then the medium scales are used to draw maps or areas that are quite bigger than the areas that are found within the large scale. Then the characteristics of this medium stage is that they are normally focused on the region, district, or a city. Say, for example, we want to focus on Nairobi, and the scale that we want to use is 1 to represent 50,000. So, for example, we can say that 1 centimeter represents 50,000 centimeters. Or, for example, you can say 1 kilometer is represented by 50,000 kilometer. So we also come to know how these scales are calculated and how conclusions are arrived at whenever we are calculating this. So the range that is focused in the medium scales is between 1 to 50,000 and 1 to 100,000. Then the last one is the small scale. The last one is the small scale. Number 3, small scale. Now, in the small scale, we focus on the scales, that are between 1 to 500,000, 1 to 500,000, and 1 to 1 million. 1 million scale. So these are the smallest scale. They are called the smallest scales because they focus on more detailed things. They focus on the areas, the larger areas. When we were starting with the scales, with the large scales, we said the large scales focuses on a village level or in a small area. And that's why we say large scale, we use large scale to depict these things clearly. And then the second one is the medium stage, which focuses on areas that are of medium size. And the areas of a medium size, which are between 50,000, 1 to 50,000, and 1 to 100,000. Then, and we said that areas of the city, areas that are of a region or a district can be used to be drawn using this scale of 1 to 50,000 or 1 to 100,000. Then coming to the small scale, the small scale ratio, we use between 1 to 500,000 and 1 to 1 million. This shows you that these are larger areas. These are big areas of the map of the world. I always say the map of Africa, that are drawn on a small piece of paper, and therefore they have to use the small scale for it to be presented on a piece of paper. So normally, characteristics that are found within this scale are somehow smaller. The details are smaller, and somehow some cannot be clearly be shown unless you use those things that we say, the components of drawing a map, that are used to depict or to show an area of interest. And when you say, if it is a building, then you have to draw a symbol showing that the building is here, because the characteristics or the materials or the components or structures, or we can say objects presented in this type of scale are smaller. They are very small because we are using the small scale to calculate them. Now, ways to express the scales. How can we express the map scales? How can we express the map scales? So number one way of expressing the map scale is, number one is statement scale. Statement scale. Statement scale. That is number one. Then number two, we use what we call fraction, representative fraction, we call it representative fraction. Representative fraction. Then the last one is the linear scale. The linear scale. So these are the three scales that I used for expressing the scales that have been used to draw the map. So what do we mean by the statement scale? What do we mean by the statement scale? This is a scale that has been drawn. This is a scale that has been written through the use of words. So we use words to express. We use words to express a scale. So for example, if we are given these numbers, if we are given these numbers, 1 represents 100,000. 100,000. And you are told to convert this into a statement scale. And we've said that a statement scale is a scale that uses words. What you have to say is that if we are given the units for this, for example, usually in a maps we use kilometers or meters. So let's say we have kilometers, and with these kilometers we want to express it in a statement scale. So what you say is that you just take this 1 and then write it into words. You say 1 represents, you use the word represent. Don't use the word 2. Say represents. Don't use the word 2 because this is a division. Use the word 1 represents 1 kilometer. 1 kilometer represents 100,000 centimeters. 1 kilometer represents, you just say it 1 kilometer, but you write it in words in full, represent 100,000 centimeters. Or still you can say 1 kilometer represent 100,000 kilometers, because remember you are reducing this. You are reducing this. Alternatively, you can say 1 centimeter represents 1 kilometer. And if you want to convert it, you can say 1 centimeter equals to 100,000 centimeter. The reason why you say 100,000 centimeter is because when you convert 1 kilometer to a centimeter, it means you multiply it by 100,000. So I hope you understand them. Then the other one is, the second one is a representative fraction. The number 2 is a representative fraction. Number 2 is a representative fraction. And in a representative fraction, we use what we call a fraction or a ratio. Use the fraction or a ratio. Just as the name, representative fraction, we use the ratio. So for example, when we say 1 equals to 100,000, 1 equals to 100,000, this means that the expression of the scale has been put through a fraction, or what we call a fraction comes as a result of the division. So we use these 2 dots to represent the fraction. So you say 1 equals to 100,000. It can be 1 equals to half a million, or 1 equals to 1 million. So this is how you express the fraction, representative fraction. And then the last one is the linear scale. The linear scale. Usually, when you look at the bottom of your map, you'll normally see a line that has been divided. a line that has been divided. So this line represents what we call the linear scale. It is linear because the numbers has been depicted, and these numbers have the same intervals that shows one point to another, and they have been divided equally. So normally it is expressed in kilometers, but it starts with 0. So when you start with 0, then you go to 1, 2, 3, and then 4. So this is 1 kilometer, second kilometer, third kilometer, and fourth kilometer. So within the subdivisions here, these divisions are divided using meters. They're divided using meters. So that when you're given to calculate a distance of an area, either using a paper, a pair of divider, or when you want to use a string. So this is the kind of measurement that you'll use. By measuring, you place it from point A to point B to show you that this area has a distance of this, and then you convert it to the correct kilometers that are the rest distance that you have been given. So in other words, you use the scales to convert the representation of that map to an actual ground. So we said a map is a representation of an object on a flat paper of an actual ground. So it is very, very important to know that whenever you are converting this, you have to use the right units that has been displayed by the cartographer, and this information is available there. So we want to take an example. We want to take an example of converting all this. So let's start with the first one. Let's start with the first statement scale. We say 1 kilometer represents 1 kilometer represents 100,000. 100,000. So this is a statement scale. This is a statement scale that we explained in number 1. So doing the same, we can convert this to a representative fraction, which will be 1 equals to, remember, use these two dots, equals to 100,000. 1 equals to 100,000. So you convert the representative statement scale to the representative fraction scale. So in the representative fraction, you use what you call the numbers. In other words, it is quantitative in nature. It is quantitative in nature, and the first one is qualitative in nature. Qualitative in nature meaning it uses words, and the second one uses the numericals, which is the quantitative kind of representation. So mark that. Then what do we achieve by using scales? What are the importance of using a scale? A scale, number 1, importance of using a scale is that it helps a person or as researcher or whoever is interested in the is interested in a map to calculate an area of a given an area that has been given. So for example, when we have a map of KU, Kenyatta University, and the map of Kenyatta University has been drawn in a small paper using a scale. So it is these small papers that we use the scales that have been given to know the actual area of KU, and then we convert it to square kilometers. We can convert to square kilometers, or we can even say meter squares. So it is very important to know that maps when given scales are used to calculate an area of a given state. Another one is it enables us to calculate the distance of an area also. So if you want to calculate, for example, point A to point B, and we have our linear scale. For example, we have a linear scale that we said it starts from 0, then we have 1, 2, 3. So these are kilometers. So from 0 to 1, 2, 3. And then we've already measured our distance using a string or a pair of devices, in which I'll also show you later on how we can calculate a distance of an area using a string, a pair of dividers, and a paper. So is this that we use to measure from point A to B, and then we convert it. We can use the linear scale to convert it to know the actual distance of point A to B. So another use of the scales is to help us understand the distance between one point to another. The distance between one point to another. Then another use is that it shows us the relationship between the map distance. It shows us the relationship between the map distance and the actual ground. Whatever has been drawn on a piece of paper or on a flat paper, this is what is converted to the actual ground to show us that actually this place has a distance from here to there, or it has an area that occupies from here to here. So it helps us that. Another scale can be used to calculate a vertical exaggeration on the map. It shows us the actual distance lengthwise, the width side. So it gives us the correct measurement of the area. So even if your map is almost round, so it has to know how many kilometers that are here around, and within that we have mathematical ways of calculating this. And I'll also come later and show you how we can use to calculate an area or measure a distance of point A to point B, or from point A to point Z. So it's very, very important to know that. The last one is it also helps us to calculate the gradient on the map. The gradient on the map. The gradient is the steepness or the steepness of an area. So it helps us to understand an area, how an area looks like. Is it rugged? Is it steep? Is it even? So it's very, very important to know that. Now, that brings us to how can we measure the distance in a map. How can we measure a distance of point 1 to point 2 or point A to point B on a map? So that's another thing that we want to focus on how we can calculate points from one place to another. So calculating of the distance, calculation of the distance on a map. So there are three ways of calculating a distance on a map. So number one is by using a string. Is by use of a string. By use of a string. That is number one. And then you convert it to the scales that we've discussed up there. Then number two is by use of a pair of dividers. A pair of dividers. And as learners, you know what a pair of dividers is. What a pair of dividers are. They are normally found on a set, and there are also bigger dividers that have been devised by the cartographers to help them in the calculation, especially when they are dealing with the bigger areas. So we have a pair of string. We have a pair of dividers, and The last one is by using what you call a piece of paper. A piece of paper. We use what you call a piece of paper. So this is how it is calculated. We'll start with number 1. How do we use a string to calculate a distance of one place to another? So let's take for example, when we are dealing with the item number 1, which is a string, using a string. When you are using a string, we are given a map. Once you are given a map, so for example, let's say this is our map. Let's use our map. So when you are using this map and this, let's say you are Lake Victoria here. This is Lake Victoria. And this is Turkana. Let's say if they were near each other. So Turkana is point B, Lake Victoria is point A. And you want to measure the distance using available infrastructure that is there. So for example, if you want to use, for example, the road that is there. So from Kisumu, then you go to Kitale, and then you reach Turkana. So if this road is not straight, and we say suppose they are close to each other, then you take a string, you identify a string. Let me show you clearly. Yes. When you have point A, you want to measure point A and point B, and you have a string. So the string that you have, you'll mark a point. If this is your string, then you'll mark a point where you start at measuring point A. And then you fix it around as you go with it. You speak it around. For example, you identify a place that is almost straight, and then you mark. Then you continue marking your string. You mark your string. You continue marking it, even to the areas that are almost straight. So when you continue marking it, it gives you the correct distance of point A to point B. So once you are through, if your string ends here, you now pick what you call a scale that has been used. And that scale, let's say you want to use the linear scale. So the linear scale is straight. We have 0, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. So we take this string and then we stretch it from 0 to where it reaches. And remember, in between we say it is in meters, while the higher numbers are in kilometers. So these are kilometers, and the middle ones are in meters. So you stretch it and then you measure. After measuring, that's when you convert it to the right scale to give us the right picture of what the distance of point A to point B is like. So it is very important to take your string and make sure you mark the point of the starting point. You mark the point where you've started in your string, and then you go with it straight. Make sure you don't make it straight to this point, like here to here. That is very wrong. Go with the infrastructural part that you are using. Let's say if you are using road, go with it. Just go with it round as you mark these areas using a string until you reach your end point. So it is this that you use, but don't put it straight, because this will give us an irrelevant distance that this will increase the biases in terms of allocation. Or if we wanted to build a road and you wanted to know the actual distance, and we say this is a representation of the actual ground of a structure, a substance, an object, or anything. So it is very important that you go with it straight, round and round and round until you reach the end point. This is what you take, and then you stretch it to your linear scale. So once you stretch it, it gives you the correct distance. And then this is what you convert. So learners, it is very, very important that from the start, we looked at what a map is, and we say it's presentation of the earth surface on a flat paper, or its relationship between the map and the actual ground. And then we differentiate it with a plan, and a plan, we say a plan is an outline of an object over a structure that is drawn to scale. And I gave you an example with a football pitch, where it is given a shape and the correct measurements are given. So the correct measurements that are given, these are the scales that are used. Then we looked at a picture, and the picture we say is the real image of an object that has been taken using a photograph. So differentiate those three when you are given a question. Know how to use a scale. Also identify the types of maps that are available. And we say these maps are topographical, topographicals and all that. Topographical sketch map and what we call a sketch map. Topographical atlas map and a sketch map. So if you have any question, you can ask. So it's very, very important we know, and the couple of questions that have been asked. So I'll see, I'll try and answer a couple of them. Somebody is asking, how can you identify the eastings and the northings on a map? So learners, for now, as we are going on, I'd like to show you how the northings and eastings are. So for us to calculate this, I'll also show you how you calculate your northings, how you calculate your eastings. So they are much ahead of this, but they are in this topic. Yes, and you will have that class next week, whereby we will calculate and use the easting and northings. And then somebody is asking, if I can repeat the definition of the topographical maps. And we say that a topographical maps, these are maps that have been drawn to a scale. These are maps that have been drawn to a scale. These are selected maps that shows what you call the physical and human features in an area and their position on the ground, and they are drawn to a scale. So actually it shows what you call, shows the selected physical human features in an area and their positions on the ground. For example, a topographical map may show a village, may show a hill, may show a mountain, may show a forest. And it can also show countries. So it depends with what you are focusing on. So that's why we say sometimes it can focus on human activity. Sometimes it can focus on the natural environment, like rivers, forest, mountains. So that is very, very important. Another one is somebody is asking, what does small scale focus on large areas? Focus on large areas while the others is in opposite. Why does small scale focus on large areas while the others is? So it depends with the cartographers. This means that if your interest is in a village and you want to present, for example, let's say the surveyors, when they want to demarcate lands in a village, in a small village, they'll be somehow bigger because the area that has been selected is quite smaller compared to an area whereby you want to survey the whole country. So it is very, very important to use the larger scale to depict things clearly, because the area you've been given is a small area. Then another one is teacher. Somebody is asking, is small, medium, and large scale a very type size of the scale? No. What we mean by the scales is that they show us what you call the size and criteria. The size and criteria. So that is what a scale focuses on. To be drawn on a map. These scales are used purposely for the selected areas. If it is Africa or the world, we'll use what you call the small scales, because this one covers a big area. But if we want to show images and things clearly, then we'll use the large scale, which is available. But if you want to use areas that are of regional view or cities, we can use the medium scale maps, the scales. Again, somebody is asking what are the types of scales. I gave you 3 types of scales: the large scale, medium scale, and the small scale. And we said the large scale ranges between 1,000 between 1 to 25,000 and 10,000, and then the medium scale focuses on between 1 to 50,000 to 1 to 100,000, and then the last one, which is the small scale, focuses on 1 to 500,000 or 500,000, and 1 to 1 million. So that's what it focuses on. So learners, I'm very grateful, even as we prepare for our coming exam. But due to the problems that we have, I dare you to, or I persuade you to take your learning seriously. And with these platforms, you can get something and apply it when time comes. So I'm very grateful. We shall continue from here because it's quite a big topic until the end. I appreciate, and may God bless you all. Thank you.